has only this to say about politics. Thank goodness the election is over.
Yay.
Also, vote for her. Here is Jenny Snyder, and she approves this message.
In the past year or more of being a member of the Articulators, I've gotten up here several times and admitted to embarrassing fact after embarrassing fact. So when I sat down to write my 10th speech from the Confident Communicator, thank you, I realized it was time yet again to make an embarrassing proclamation. I am not a confident public speaker, even after all this time. All that kept running through my head as I sat down to write this speech was, no, stupid, juvenile, no. And I realized that I kind of thought that all of my other speeches were sort of a silly waste of time. And you've all given me such positive feedback over the past year, but it doesn't take away from the fact that if I could, I'd redo every single one of those speeches. So I decided as I was going through all of the ideas in my head that the best thing that I could do was to get up here and be myself, because in everything that I've done at Toastmasters, from my speaking to my evaluating and my table topics, was just a, what the hell, I am who I am, and that's what I've done. I'm lucky enough to have grown up in a family that always told me that I could do anything in the world that I wanted to do. My mother especially always told me I can be anything, and she would constantly remind me that I light up a room, that my spirit shines, that my empathy and my intelligence would take me places, and blah, 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 blah. Because none of that ever hit home. I guess all of the little spurts of popularity I enjoyed when I was a kid were always based on whether or not I have to be thin or fat that year. So I never trusted that just being myself was good enough. I did learn back then, though, to create for myself places where I might feel more comfortable. Through band, newspaper, through the friendships I've made in pre-internet online bulletin board systems, and through the cast of a production of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Basically, any place that I could unfurl my geek flag and let it fly high were the places that I felt truly, truly comfortable. When I worked at a real estate investment company, I learned a very valuable lesson from one of our sales guys. When he first started with the company, he'd struggled a little bit in bringing in new business, but given time became one of our top salespeople. And that's because he went into every single situation always remembering to be himself. He and I would speak all the time about the fantastic relationships that we had with his clients because we said they were real people. And all of those relationships were based on real relationships based on real personalities. I gained even more confidence from this working relationship because I was able to forge that see, even after 10 speeches, you can't be too confident. But that being said, I did gain a lot of confidence from the relationships that I was able to forge with this sales guy and with his clients, because there was no pretense, there were no games. We just simply were who we were, and we were rewarded for it. I've got to say, the past couple of years of my professional life have been a little bit tough on my self-confidence. 4 years ago, I was an assistant vice president of operations at a company that I worked my way up through the ranks rather quickly. I was well respected and well liked. When 2008 totally killed that company and my career path, I was forced to move on. And let's just say what came to me totally crushed my self-confidence, and I actually found myself going to therapy for the first time in my life. Somewhere along the line, I think I sort of subconsciously decided I wasn't going to let it get the best of me. I went back to school, and I decided to let that be my driving force. Knowing that I was in the midst of whipping myself up a much better future was what did it for me. So some of you may know that I've started a new job in the past couple of months. And I've been looking for a while, but and I'd been on several interviews, but those interviews hadn't panned out. And I think it was because I made the decision going in that I was going to go to every single interview from here until eternity, wearing my personality on my sleeve. So if the position didn't pan out simply because I went in there with my personality as it was, then I didn't need to be there anyway. I knew almost the moment I walked into my first interview at the company I am at now that I was in the right place. I had the best interview I've ever had in my life, and I immediately liked everybody that I met on that day. I felt comfortable, and I was me during that conversation, which went on for several hours. I was just me. A few weeks ago, though, I went to have drinks with a couple of my new bosses, and I learned that I almost didn't get called back for a second interview.
Wow.
When one of the bosses asked me the question, "What is the hardest thing you've ever done in your life?" I flailed around for a minute before answering, "Getting my professional licenses when I was 22 years old." Not only was that answer not true, but it was about as one-dimensional as I could have possibly gotten, and they knew it. So when the COO decided he wanted to bring me in for a second interview, the boss said, "You can bring her in, but I'm not going to hire her." I'd been thinking about that stupid answer for weeks by the time I got the call for that second interview. The first thing I said when I sat down in the room full of everybody who happened to work at that company, I said, "The last time I was here, Josh asked me a question, what was the hardest thing I'd ever done? And I gave a stupid answer. So let me fix that for you." And it was from there that I went on to tell a story I told here before about last year when I had foot surgery and didn't walk for 3 months and was working full-time and going to school 4 nights a week, and then my mom had a terrible accident, and my grandmother died, and my dad had a stroke, and I still lost 60 pounds and made president's list at school. That was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But I didn't have the confidence in myself in that moment to realize what a true accomplishment it had been. I didn't have the confidence to share that story. My bosses say they knew right at the moment when I did share that story that I was the person they wanted to join their team. I got a phone call from them 20 minutes after I walked out of that second interview telling me they were canceling all the other interviews and bringing me in. The same night I was told that story, we also had a discussion about where they see me going with the company. There's been a lot of talk about forming an association, a philanthropic association. We've already done several events to benefit local charities, which have been very successful. They know that I'm minoring in nonprofit management, and while what's been running through my head since the very first time I talked to them was someday I'd like to run that association, I didn't have the confidence to tell them. In that moment, with several drinks in us when we were having a good time, I'd really like to run your association. But when they got it out of me, it turns out that they were thinking the same exact thing. But I still didn't have the confidence. So I said to them, "I'm a little bit different. I'm not like any of those other women we know who are running those foundations. That's not me." And so they said, "Exactly. And we wouldn't have hired you had you been the least bit like them." So that moment did so much for me. I learned again that truly mastering the art of being oneself will take you so far in life. And now I found a place where I'm accepted for me, and that's such a fantastic feeling. What I'd like to leave all of you with today is a challenge to find places where you can be yourself. The Articulator should be one of those places because every single one of us accepts every single other person for exactly how we are. So come to your Articulators and your other places of safe harbor and practice the art of self-confidence because it will serve you so well in the other places in your life. This is a lesson I'm still working on constantly, every single day. But it's nice to know that I'm in a place now where I feel like I'm truly okay.